after talking to hundreds of users and Catholic singles, it comes from a very good place. It comes from a place of not wanting to use the other, which is a good, noble thing. We need to make sure that, we're not using each other. But going to coffee, you don't need to discern, we don't need to say novena before saying yes to coffee. Like, you just don't. And it's funny because the first time we went to Seek, I made a joke about that in our opening, and the guys stood up and clapped. And I said, women, like, you don't need to say a decade of the rosary before you decide if you can say yes to a coffee date. There's things on both sides that are broken mentally. I think there's a lot of fatigue that's surrounds that as well, of just like, they're tired, women are tired, everyone's tired, but we got to be able to help ourselves.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Catholic Founders Podcast. I'm Silas Maynor, your host. If you are new here, Catholic Founders is on a mission to help Catholics launch and grow their businesses in a way that helps them become saints because of their businesses rather than in spite of them. As Catholic entrepreneurs, we know that we are not exactly created just to achieve some sort of, earthly glory, but we are created to and called to be instruments of God's will in the world and to bring glory to Him. Before we start, if you are interested in sponsoring this podcast or the newsletter and you want to get in front of hundreds of Catholic business owners every week, you can reach out to us at admin@catholicfounders.com to learn more. We would greatly appreciate your support. All right, folks, today we are speaking with Taylor O'Brien, the co-founder and CEO of Candid Dating. If you have not already heard about these guys, they have built a very interesting virtual speed dating platform turned app specifically for Catholic singles. And they've done it around a very unique promise that they will never ask their users to swipe. It's a highly energetic episode because Taylor brings a lot of just this classic Texas energy to the conversation. And we end up doing a deep dive into why mainstream swiping culture is actually kind of stripping away human dignity of the person involved. And in this conversation, Taylor shares a lot of different things from her organic journey of actually starting this company after some of her own kind of personal experiences. And then there's a couple of stories she shares where, there was one point where her offshore dev team was not showing up, and she was really at her breaking point with the company. She shares about how they broke records at the Seek conference with 2,500 singles in a room doing speed dating, and also just handling deep spiritual lessons and letting go of control and learning how to trust in God when things are not always going the way we plan. So I pray that you listen to this with an open heart and allow the Holy Spirit to really guide and direct you and listen to what Taylor is sharing and figure out how you can imitate that. Are there areas where you can learn from her experiences? Again, you may not be somebody who's single and looking to date, but this episode is full of a lot of advice and interesting perspectives that Taylor brings to the table. So I pray that you listen with an open heart. All right, without any further delay, enjoy the show. All right, welcome to the podcast, Taylor. We're finally making it happen.
Thank you for having me. I know I'm excited.
We are very excited to have you. You guys are doing some pretty interesting stuff. I think we should just start at the very beginning. Give us a quick introduction to who you are and what your company is, and then we'll go through the story.
Yeah, thanks. My name's Taylor O'Brien. I live here in Dallas-Fort Worth. This is home. I was born and raised here. And I am the co-founder, CEO of a Catholic dating platform turned app called Candid Dating. And we introduce Catholic singles to one another virtually through speed dating. And we built an entire product around the promise that we would never ask our users to swipe.
Nice. Yeah, we'll get into that in a second. I think there's some very interesting items there. But I will say, do you think that being a Texan has really helped you become a good founder? Because I feel like there's so much energy behind people who are Texans. They have this gregariousness to them pretty much in every case.
That's a great question. One I haven't been asked before. Yeah, we take a lot of pride in being from Texas down here. I'm born and bred Texan. So I think, that influence carries over to every aspect of my life.
It's pretty fascinating that there are states that are completely self-hating, like New Jersey. I haven't met a person from New Jersey who loves it, right?
Okay.
Like they'll maybe say like negative things about New York City, but like they also don't like New Jersey. So I don't know. It's like Tennessee. There's a lot of pride about Tennessee and being in Tennessee.
A lot of pride.
Tennessee. But I know some states are not like that. But Texas is definitely a very proud state. I like that a lot.
We're proud.
Now, tell us a little bit of the origin story of this, right? So we kind of have we'll get into the nuances of what exactly the company does and everything, but what's the origin story of you getting into this and building this company?
Yeah, it started very organically from a personal pain point of mine. I was actually engaged out of college to a guy that I was dating in college, and ended that engagement. After that, I started dating again, and this was probably around 2018, 19, 2020. And I got on the apps, your Tinder, Bumble, Hinge, all of those were very prominent as they are still very used by the culture, which we can get into maybe also in a little bit. But I just didn't feel settled dating that way. And I knew everything was kind of moving towards online dating. But specifically as a Catholic, I felt called to make friends in the Catholic community that I had never had. We grew up around a lot of Protestants. My parents are both in public education. My dad was a coach. And so especially down here, as we were talking about Texas, there's pockets of Catholicism and it's definitely grown. But growing up, I just didn't have that Catholic community. And so I started an Instagram page. It was called Candid Communion. And the sole purpose of that was just to meet other like-minded Catholic singles and women specifically who were in my stage of life, who were trying to date maybe someone, or I actually ended up meeting a lot of women who were in my position who were engaged. The wedding didn't happen. And so it was a very unique, I think, viewpoint that I had. And as I started hosting events online and in person for these Catholic women, all anyone could talk about was dating. And where are the Catholic men? And why have I not been able to find Catholic men either in my area, or the dating apps aren't matching me right with men? Maybe they say that they're Catholic through the filters on Hinge or Tinder or what have you. But then you ask them about their faith and they're like, what are you talking about? So that was something that kept coming up. And then men started finding my page, asking me to introduce them to the women. And so long story short, I decided to put everybody in a room. Like I said, it was around 2020. So everyone was very virtual. And I snuck into the computer lab at the ISD I was working at the time, and hosted the first speed dating event that it was through Candid Communion. But yeah, we had 400 signups in less than 48 hours. It was crazy. I posted it to my story like, hey, I'm gonna host a speed dating event, just try to match Catholic singles up and prove that there are young, fun, normal Catholic singles looking for a spouse. You don't have to get on these swiping apps to find them. They're actually right here. We're existing. We just don't see each other. We can't recognize each other. And so it was a really fun experiment. I did that 3 times before I couldn't scale it that way, right? Like in starting out, that wasn't necessarily in the intention, but the longer that went on and the more people reached out about wanting to join, I was like, okay, we need to figure out a way to make this something that we can do over and over again.
So you were just doing this because because people were asking you and you thought, maybe I can do this to help other people? Or what was the motivation to actually make the effort to do that?
Yeah. Okay. So going back to being, I'm very competitive, right? And so I have a football background, football ops, and I was seeing all of our Christian brothers and sisters seem to have no problem meeting one another. They seemed to meet pretty seamlessly and start dating, getting into relationships and marriage. And it didn't seem as easy as a Catholic. And I wanted our community to have the same type of outcome as it seemed that our Christian brothers and sisters were having. And the swiping apps were kind of doing the opposite, right? They have their place and they've definitely done a lot of good, but so many people had the same experience where they felt like it was contrary to the process, was contrary to what we believe as Catholics in the human person and the dignity of the swipe. And what does that really mean? And what does that turn into as far as habits that are built? The swiping apps allow you to ghost very easily with no guilt, right? And so bottom line, I just saw an opportunity to help see if I could solve a problem, and it worked.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating how some of these things start, but there is always some amount of needing to step up to the plate to take a swing at it, because a lot of people might have had the similar thing. I said, oh no, that's not for me to do. I wouldn't call it necessarily laziness, but at least at the worst, a best case scenario, just not willing to put in the effort. But how did those first events go? And were there any particular outcomes from that you know of, or any things that you tracked?
Yeah, it was totally organic. Whenever I put the sign up, we split. When I say we, my now husband helped me, and then my now business partners actually, which the two of them met through this first event, but that's another story. I put out a sign up and started to see the patterns where, people were typically between 20 and 40, and then figured out a way to split them up by age, location, the best that we could, right? I wasn't necessarily filtering for geographic regions or anything, but the whole idea behind it was to allow them an opportunity to talk face to face. So instead of getting on and swiping and being a photo and doing it that way, I wanted to give an opportunity for these people to get online and talk exactly like you and I are doing right now. So there was a platform called Wonder, which was a networking event for corporate companies, or a networking platform for corporate companies, where you could sign on and you have a little icon on your screen and there are tables on your screen, and you can drag your face to a table, and whenever you are at a table or more than one people are at a table, you see what we're seeing right now, where I could see you and we could talk. And so wanted to give the opportunity to those who wanted it, who wanted to talk face to face and show up fully as themselves and be a full person with a laugh and a smile and just try something fun and new. And that was really the thing, was how can I make it fun and low barrier to entry? And everyone was Catholic. Everyone was somewhat vetted. Like I did some background research to make sure that like these people existed. And so I think the trust that I had built with that community on Candid Communion, I think allowed them to trust me to try something new. And then, we had several people talk. I don't know that any marriages came out of that. I found out later that there was a couple that dated for almost 6 months after those first events. But I think what it really did for us, for those of us that were involved in this experiment, was that there could be something different, right? That something different could work, or that could be a good experience, and that the tools that were out there already existing didn't have to be the only option.
Yeah, that's fast. I think this would be interesting to talk about right now. You mentioned that the apps in a lot of ways have this negative thing that they kind of bring out in people. What are your perspectives on why that's like? Is it just because you're completely judging based off of looks? Is it because you're judging, you feel like more of a consumer? What are the negative things that you would kind of point to in that experiment or in that experience compared to what you guys are doing, where you probably don't actually necessarily know who you're about to meet, but you're going on this like round robin of meeting multiple people in one session?
Yeah. I think the dating apps, as they are, the swiping apps, are not inherently designed to be bad, right? Like, they're helping solve a problem. And I think when used properly, those problems can be solved. And we see that with, I'm sure you have many friends. I believe, didn't you and your wife meet on a dating app?
Yeah, we met on Hinge.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So there are really awesome outcomes when those apps are used properly that can come from using them. But then the flip side of that is there are no barriers, right? So if I wanted to sit and swipe for hours or days or months with no intention of really moving forward, with no intention of taking the next step with someone that I match with, say I match with someone, but I just don't feel like responding to them that day. Like, there's no accountability around the habits that can be formed while using those apps. And so, yes, I think we become consumers of others, right? Of the illusion that we have hundreds of people out there that we could potentially be matched up with and or pursued by, which isn't necessarily true. So I think it does that. I think it gives a false sense of reality in that way, that there are limitless options. And then also the accountability piece on, I think one of the biggest complaints that we got from Catholic singles who were trying to get off that style of dating app was you could message for weeks back and forth, and it could be endless texting, and there's no push unless you have the discipline and the habit and the intention of moving it forward. There's nothing there that's making you do that. Right. So you could essentially have, messaged back and forth with your wife for weeks and got a dopamine hit every time you saw a message come from her, every time you saw a match, but you may not have had an intention of moving forward. And so that's really what we were trying to create. Once we realized what it was that we were, the opportunity that we had, we wanted to figure out a way that we could give Catholic singles an alternative to that system.
Now, I'm kind of curious. There's a lot of things I would like to understand your perspective on, because I do think, I'm grateful that I don't have to go through this anymore. I have a lot of friends who I know are struggling with this situation. I'm curious, what I'm trying to do with Catholic Founders in many ways is try to get Catholic entrepreneurs to help create the future and the culture that we want. And I think that in some ways it comes down to like how we raise our own kids and how are we teaching them how to date properly and all these things. So I'm curious, I'll try to pick apart some of these things one by one and get your perspective on them. First of all, my understanding, you correct me if I'm wrong, is that on the swiping apps, isn't it something like women have like a much better, they reject a lot of people compared to, they reject a lot of men, and then men that say yes to a lot more. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So
I don't have, yes, from my own, research and experience, yes.
Yeah. So if that's the case, then did you ever have any challenges like having women break that habit of thought where it's like, I do have endless choices? Because I think that for men it's a little different, but I know that I've heard the stats for women, it's like they basically have endless choices. Did you have an issue with that when you were getting them kind of back into that Catholic mentality of like, no, we're going to go and like meet this defined number of people and get to know them and then choose from this group?
We're very transparent and very direct on who we're trying to serve and the mindset that we ask you to come in with. If you're looking for an opportunity like you just described, where you want to be able to leisurely pick through people, which is, I don't really think we think about what that means whenever we're saying it, but there are people on the other side of the screen. There was you on the other side of your photo, on the other side of your profile. What we've done is we've brought you to life, and so you show up as you. And I think that once you're face to face with someone, obviously we ask for openness and vulnerability because it is a different process, but once you're face to face with someone, I think it's very hard for you to not realize that there's someone on the other side of the line, because literally you're there. And so yes, I think it has taken some adjustment for some people to snap back some of those habits, but at the same time, they come to us because they want something different. They know what they're coming for, and it excites me that we get to give them a different experience.
Hey folks, as a quick reminder, we have recently launched The Faithful Steward. This is a free private deal flow newsletter for Catholic investors to be made aware of opportunities to invest in other Catholic-owned or led companies or projects. These deal types will range from startup investment opportunities to film opportunities to real estate, anything you can think of, it will be in there. And it's totally free. We are not charging for this. We are just trying to help connect the community. To sign up, you can go to CatholicDealFlow.com. That's CatholicDealFlow.com. How it works is when we get a deal, we make sure that these guys are Catholic. We will then package it up really nicely, send it over to you, and then you can take a look and decide if you would like to reach out. The benefit of this is that you get to remain completely anonymous from all those capital seekers while still getting the benefit of seeing those deals. So you get the benefit of seeing the deals without the publicity of being known. We are not gatekeeping here, so just trying to use our role as a community connector to help Catholics invest in each other, and doing this all again for free. If you are a Catholic builder who is looking to raise capital, whether that again is for a film, for real estate, for a startup, or just a mom and pop brick and mortar business, you can go to CatholicDealFlow.com to sign up. You just submit your deck there and a bit of information about you. We'll reach out, we'll verify that you are in fact a practicing Catholic, then we'll package it all up and send it out to the newsletter, and if they're interested, they'll reach out to you. Again, that is CatholicDealFlow.com. It's completely free. You can sign up today. All right, back to the show. Part of the reason I ask is because I think that for young people, it's challenging to break habits that you didn't even know were necessarily like counter to the flourishing that you want. It's also I believe in personal responsibility, but I also believe that young people have been basically just like put on a dopamine machine since they're a kid, right? Because no matter how good your parents are about keeping you away from screens, like there's just so many like stimulants everywhere about all these like things, and if you live in a city at least, that it's hard to like learn how to break these things. I'd be curious your perspective on, and again, I'm no expert at this, but I feel like you might know this. I've heard from people that like in the 50s, for example, dating was a term you use when you were getting to know multiple people. So you would date multiple people, and then you would get to know them, and then it would be like more group events typically, and then eventually you would decide, I really like this person, I'm gonna like go more serious, I'm gonna court them. First of all, is that correct understanding to your knowledge?
Yes.
And how do we bring that back? Because I would assume that, to me, that sounds like a very healthy type of culture where it's like we can be willing to be friends, and it doesn't have to be considered serious or like super long commitment. So that way you're more willing to say, yes, of course I'll go on a date with you, because I'm not by doing this, I'm not committing to something for 6 months. I'm just like hanging out. Can you speak more about how we bring that back?
Yes. So we're starting to get into the other half of why Candid was created, and perhaps the most exciting reason to me. As I mentioned in that first event, the goal was just to get Catholic singles in a room and prove that the other exists, and then let you be in communion with another. Something that we have learned that's very specific in our Catholic community, while very beautiful in thought of, I don't want to use the other person, therefore I need to be very serious in my dealings with them, right? Like I need to have everything figured out. I don't want to lead them on in any way. Therefore I need to discern properly steps A, B, C, but you're not even really to step A yet. But we put so much pressure around doing the opposite of what the culture does, right? Because the way that the world dates is so casual that it's completely on its head. And we try so hard to do the opposite, which is really beautiful. And we recognize that the end of this comes the sacrament of marriage, but we miss the very normal human necessary part in the middle that is being in communion with one another, getting to know one another allows us to date better. It allows us to know ourselves better, to relate to people better. And that is not a bad thing. That's not a sinful thing. It's actually a very normal part of the human experience. And it's whenever we're talking to people in older generations about candid, or just about dating in general, they almost can't wrap their mind around it because it is completely opposite of the way that we've done it for the entirety of existence, right? Like you were talking about, courting is a very normal thing and getting to know people, but we're almost, again, I do believe after talking to hundreds of users and Catholic singles, it comes from a very good place. It comes from a place of not wanting to use the other, which is a good, noble thing. We need to make sure that, we're not using each other. But going to coffee, you don't need to discern, we don't need to say novena before saying yes to coffee. Like you just don't. And it's funny because the first time we went to Seek, I made a joke about that in our opening, and the guys stood up and clapped. It was literally a standing ovation.
Yeah.
Because it was, again, just a passing joke. And I said, women, you don't need, to say a decade of the rosary before saying, while he's standing in the talking to you before you decide if you can say yes to a coffee date. And I think the guys are so, I don't know, there's things on both sides that are broken mentally, the mentality behind it. But I think there's a lot of fatigue that's surrounds that as well, of just they're tired, women are tired, everyone's tired, but we got to be able to help ourselves. And I think you were talking about something that Gen Z, like you said, they have grown up. I fault them not at all for what we have done to them and what we've thrown them into. It's true. They feels like they're almost an experiment. It's not fair and it's not right, but we have to help them now. We've done this. We've put them in front of screens for their entire life. They've been raised in front of screens. They don't know a world without them. And now we ask them to okay, now go find a spouse. And how do you do that whenever
the experience is also it's broader than that too, because the world in general has become so utilitarian. And I wanted to bring up a point you mentioned, which is we put a lot of weight on every interaction being quote unquote serious, right? It's what is the purpose for me to meet with you, right? You reach out to somebody, I get this, I understand the reaction because there's so many people, but on LinkedIn, I'll connect to somebody and I'm actually just kind of interested in them, genuinely, I'm curious what they're up to, but everybody always assumes you got some kind of sales pitch and that you're coming with it. It's no, I'm actually just curious to get to know you. I don't really have an agenda, but our world has become so busy that it's also become so utilitarian where it's I need to have a reason for everything rather than, and I need to have a particular reason for going out to coffee. I think this is a big, outside of dating, this is an issue. Why don't we just get coffee with the people that we bump into at church who are, our brother in Christ sitting in the pew next to us? We go to church with them every Sunday. We know how many kids they have or, where they're from, but we don't know what struggles they're going through. We hardly even know what they do for work. And that is what is creating these isolated worlds, even inside of the Catholic Church, which is supposed to be united fully. So I think that we need to get away from this sense that everything has to have some particular utility and outcome. And I think that will feed into the way that people can date more, just getting to know people, right? And getting to hang out and go to events where there's multiple people that could become your spouse someday, right? And one last thing I'll opine on here is, as business owners, I talk a lot about how we can use our influence to make the world a better place. For any business owner who has physical location or who has maybe they've made good money and they have a bigger house now and they have space, host things, allow people to have a third space, create encounter opportunities for other people to bump into each other, to meet. It doesn't have to be related to dating, but someday, for people who are not talking, you're probably going to have kids who need to have, they want to find a spouse too, build this habit now. Don't let them all fend for themselves, and just, it's also good for business too. There's also business opportunities that come out of these random introductions and everything. So any commentary you want to have there before I continue on?
No, I think that was beautifully said.
Well, I hope so. I hope we get lots of business owners to start just thinking outside the box here, because we have opportunities to do things. I think we can applaud Rob Hayes, especially for being a gracious host. Obviously, we hung out at the event we hosted there, but people like Rob, having that third space, allowing people into their home, and doing things is really important. But now I'm curious, going back to the journey a little bit. Once you decided to go fully in on this, I want to know more about how did you start to scale it, and what were the key setbacks along the way? Because it's always nice looking back, and we always tell good stories, but what are the core things where you're man, this sucks, this is really hard, I want to quit? What were the challenges?
Great question. So once, like I said, we hosted those 3 events in the computer lab. I hand matched the people at my parents' kitchen table, and
Nice.
My friend Nathan, he said, I have an offshore team, an offshore dev team. They're finished with a project that I have them working on. I have them for a few more months. If you want to try to work with them and build what it is that you're imagining, take them, do that. And so obviously I took him up on it. And I think from the beginning, that was, I don't want to say a rude awakening, because I knew that what does it take to have a thought and make it exist? Obviously, there's a lot that goes into that, from A to B. So working with an offshore team was very challenging. We did not speak the same language. We were in complete opposite time zones. So every time I was working on Candid, it was pitch black and I was having to use Google Translate. And, so it was kind of interesting from the start. But once we got through that and got the first version standing, it was very buggy, but it proved that this idea that we had, that can we take a group of Catholic singles, put them face to face and figure out some way to match them with an algorithm that we created. So age, location, different characteristics about you based on what we know through the onboarding that we created at the time. Just getting it off the ground was tricky, but it was fun. And so once we did that, and like I said, there were so many bugs that we tested it with our family, but that version never saw the light of day to anyone outside of our family. And by the grace of God, I stayed on an Airbnb ranch one weekend. I wasn't even supposed to be out of town, but met a man. His name is Brent Phillips. He and his brother had just sold a company called Second MD. So it's a doctor to patient second opinion platform, video platform. And so they had just made their exit, and he took this money that he'd made from this exit and bought land here in Texas. They moved down to Texas, and I just happened to stay on his ranch, so we got to talking, and he was building this. It's called Milk and Honey. I'll plug them. So if you want to go look them up, Milk and Honey Ranch, they're phenomenal. And if you see the photos of what it looks like now, at the time when I was there, it was literally just grass fields. Yes. It's incredible what they've done, but it just felt like a very divine meeting, and the Holy Spirit was definitely involved, because he told me about Second MD and I told him about Candid and what we were trying to do. And there were so many similarities that crossed over, and he actually ended up coming on and being our first CTO and helped us build the version that we actually took to market, which was much less buggy. I won't say there were no bugs, but so that whole process was kind of my introduction to true entrepreneurship, and the amount of trust that I had to learn and control, dare I say, that I had to learn how to let go of, and the things that I just had to trust that the Lord would handle, they were just actually completely out of my control. No amount of grit could solve some of these problems that, we were trying to piece together. But yeah, we launched in 2024. So now we're an app. So we are called a dating app. We didn't launch that app until October of 2025. So just not even a year ago. We were on the web, and we were a platform, and took a lot of pride in saying that we are an experience, right? You come to us because you want an interactive experience that we can give you in real time. You show up as yourself with a laugh and a smile, like I said, and we can kind of talk about maybe later. I'm going off a little bit, but the benefits to that. So yeah, Brent came on, helped us build what we took to market. And then from there, we just refined and refined again.
What was it like when you guys first went to market with the web platform? What were the core kind of things that, in general, obviously, maybe the product wasn't perfect, but what did you see as the reaction from the community, and how do you manage this if you are trying to, I can assume in some cases, geographically speaking, you probably have people from all over the place, but how do you try to manage that? Do you make it very open? Hey, I'm willing to, if I check the box, I'm willing to long distance, put them in touch with anybody. How did you manage that part?
Yeah. So there were two ways that we could do it, and we very much analyzed both. We could either launch nationwide and grow from there, and the people who were interested could join, or we could try to go city by city. We chose to open nationwide, and so we launched. And we had a wait list that was going for several months before we actually launched. So we were able to see kind of where people were. But for what we were trying to do and make sure that, obviously, one of the key pieces of hosting real-time events is that the people are there, right? You have to log in real time. And so we thought that launching nationwide and letting word of mouth help us grow as we were using some of the marketing tactics, and we can kind of get into that, what worked and what didn't work. But that was what we decided to do. And then another piece of that, I think what kind of pushed us over the edge is if you truly want to date and marry a Catholic, you have to come to the understanding that our pool is smaller than the general culture, right? And so naturally we are going to have to be, and you cannot like this and that's fine, but we're going to have to be a little bit more open to being long distance if our goal truly is to date and marry a practicing Catholic, because that is a very, while I think it's a great criteria, but it's a specific criteria that you aren't going to be able to just go knock on your neighbor's door and like where, in other instances, maybe they're a fit for you. Like that's not going to happen. And so I think that's what made us feel a little bit more peace about launching nationwide, is the people that wanted to really do this and maybe had the means to date long distance and were willing to, they would be a lot of our users, and they are. And actually it's interesting because we've grown so much. We have several thousand users now, and we have pockets all over the country, but our nationwide events are still our most attended by far. People love them. And so I'm really grateful that that's the decision that we made to go to launch nationwide first, and then grow in the different pockets of first where we knew there was a deep population of Catholics already. I'm here in Dallas, up in the Northeast, Midwest, different pockets. Florida's really big, California, obviously, but we got it out there first. And we also found value in our users using the product and giving us feedback while we were trying to grow, so that we didn't have to, give our best version right off the bat. And then, everything lived and died off of that first experience.
Quick question for all the Catholic business owners listening. Are you running your business, or is your business running you through all of the admin tasks that you're doing on a regular basis? We see so many founders doing repeatable administrative tasks, and that's why we started Paraclete VA. We bridge the gap by connecting you with high-quality, Catholic, and vetted virtual assistants from all around the world who come from our existing network, so that we know we can trust them. And so can you. Many of our Catholic Founders Guild members have hired through this service and are using this to offload their finance, marketing, administrative, and other busy work, so that they can focus on what really matters and growing their business. It's the stuff that needs to get done, but shouldn't be done by you. The cost is simple. Pay $500 on the day the candidate starts, and $500 if you're still happy with them after 30 days. Most hires take less than 10 days to fill. Just email admin@catholicfounders.com with a little bit about what you're looking for. We'll send you some candidates, you do some interviews. Most of the time, you'll have your hire in under 10 days, and this way you can start focusing on what really matters. Stop doing the busy work and start moving the needle. I'm kind of curious. You mentioned something earlier that you sounded a little bit hesitant because it must have been challenging. You had to learn how to let things go and trust. Can you explain like a little bit more about that, and how, if that experience taught you how to come closer to God, or if that experience of trusting, whether it's a business partner or whatnot, like how that brought you deeper in your faith?
Absolutely, yeah. There was a very specific moment that I remember when I've been working with this offshore team. My husband Logan and I, we had just gotten married. I was staying up all hours of the night working with him. Like, we had put so many hours into this, and I was just like, is this even going to exist? We hadn't seen the final product yet. And I remember, like I said, months of working with them, and then they kind of went silent. And I was sweeping my kitchen and I was praying out loud, and I said, Lord, why did you ask me to do all of this? Why did you ask me to spend these hours if I was never going to hear from these people again, and it was going to be all a waste? And who knows, maybe they ran off. Maybe they ran off and they're using it for their own, whatever, I had no idea. And I just remember that was the first moment of like questioning. Again, this was very early on, right? We've had several moments since then, but I just remember I was sweeping our kitchen and I was praying and asking him to just like give me some peace about this, that all of that wasn't completely wasted, because now I'm excited about it and I really believe in it, and I'm starting to get people who are interested in it, right? We've been talking about it online and people are signing up on our wait list, and I feel like now I owe it to our community and to Catholic singles to give them what we've been building, because in a way we built it with them, right? Like that first group of several hundred people that tried that computer lab version, I was constantly sending them surveys and asking them questions. So I felt like it was somewhat of a group effort. Anyway, about a minute later, I got a ping from those guys, and they sent me the final version. But it was almost like the Lord had to bring me to the edge of like, do you not trust that, you've done what I've asked you to do, and I will do my part as well? And again, that's very, I'm sure people who have been in business much longer, that was only one example I could give, but at that time it was the biggest, it felt like it weighed the most.
Yeah. I think this is probably not, experiences like this have to be common for most entrepreneurs to an extent. And I do think it's interesting. It's not something, we do talk about it a little bit with Catholic Founders, but the idea that we already know in our own personal lives that God gives us experiences that help us to come to understand him more. And why wouldn't the same thing be true in entrepreneurship? So we can look through those experiences, through those hardships, or through the wins even in some cases, and say like, okay, well, this is a another sign for me to trust further. And I think that I appreciate you sharing the story. I think it's everybody else should probably reflect on moments, because there's probably more than we realize. We just don't spend enough time actually thinking about them. So I am curious to talk about some marketing tactics. So with a product like this, I think this can be applicable. It doesn't have to be specifically for people in the dating world, but when you're building a product for Catholics and you may not have the biggest budget to just market to everybody, what are some of the ways that you try to get in front of people? Any guerrilla to marketing tactics or things that you did?
Yeah, guerrilla marketing for sure, especially here in DFW. There was not a parish here that did not have candid cards stuffed in their bulletins, set outside confession, set inside the confessional. Like, we were everywhere. Catholic events here, we had some really awesome friends that would help us go around if there were like multiple events on a night and have people sign up for our wait list. That was back before we launched. So we definitely put in, and still even, guerrilla marketing is one of my favorites, actually, just because you can like see, feel, touch, like be out there yourself. Influencer marketing has been great for us. So I was surprised by that. Just, I don't know why. I think it moved the needle. So the first year that we were in business, we grew organically solely on word of mouth. And that was crazy to me. And so I was interested to see how influencer marketing would do, but it did exponentially better than what I think we anticipated. Obviously, is really big for us in doing in-person events. So while we have our virtual platform app that we host events on multiple days a week, we also host in-person events. And then our biggest event, and where we've broken the world record twice now, which is really exciting, has been at Seek. And Seek is major for us for multiple reasons. It gives us a lot of time with Gen Z and young Catholic. A lot of them are single and professionals, and just allows us to be immersed in them, hear them all day, every day, see how they're interacting. So that's always really fun. But then this past year, we broke the record from the year before, but for the largest speed dating event in person. And we had 2,500 Catholic singles in a room dating. And the whole goal there is just to show anybody who's at Seek, but specifically that Gen Z group, that you can have fun, like going back to what we were talking about earlier, fun, like conversations that could turn into something, or be a fun experience, or just be a great conversation, or be an opportunity. My husband, like I said, he's a football coach. He calls it getting reps. Some of these, like we were talking about, people who maybe have been behind their screens for their entire lives and aren't as comfortable in social situations, Candid is a place for them to come and get reps and talk to women or men over and over again. And what we do with those in-person events is we give them that experience in person. And so Seek is a really big marketing play for us, just because we're able to be so right there with our user, and then also build trust with them, right? I love talking to them, learning about what their actual problems are, what they're experiencing on the day-to-day, and it gives us an opportunity to be there, hear them, and then go and implement what they actually need back into our platform, into our app.
Yeah, I mean, that's I think that's a severely. I like the fact that you guys still appreciate that, because I think that you hear the stories of some of like these really big time CEOs and founders, and they still themselves like to take customer success calls or whatever, just like get into it, use the app. A lot of the best companies that are built are the ones that they have time using their own product, right? Like, I guarantee that the LinkedIn developers do not do a good job of using their own app, because it sucks.
We actually had
time on LinkedIn every day, so I have lots of complaints.
No, that's great. We had 9 customer calls this week, actually. Mariana
Nice.
usually schedules those for us. And yeah, we very much love to hear. And that was the beauty of building this with them, right? Like, I took a lot of pride in that, and that meant a lot to me, that while we were building the app, we were still in touch with the people that we were building for. And even still, they've gotten very comfortable with telling us what they like and what they don't like. And while that's not always the most fun, right? Like, it's especially like when it's late at night, or you've had a long day or a long week, or you're trying to solve everyone's problems. But I really appreciate that they care enough and want a better experience and are willing to share their honest feedback, good and bad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I wanted to maybe recap one of those things. So you talked about the go-to-market tactics. Were the core things like dropping off cards in churches, hosting events? Like, what are the core things? Because again, I think there's just having some ideas can always be helpful for other people who are also trying to sell to Catholics.
Yeah. We, like, really low budget, would just get little cards made and take those everywhere, because you can get, thousands printed. So we would take those everywhere, leave them like I said, in churches, at young adult group nights. We would hand them to people as they were exiting, whatever, even confession. Like we had a priest who I was leaving them outside the confessional. He said, just hand me some.
So he didn't get upset?
No, he didn't get upset. No. It's interesting the way that most of them are really awesome and react very positively to what we're trying to do, because I think they see it, right? And they experience it too. So yeah, cards, I'm not above a cold call. We tried, oh my gosh, we tried a certain plan for parishes right when we launched. And this was, again, probably 2020, maybe it was before our launch, so 2023, 2024. So yeah, around that time. And we had a hard time getting parishes to want to endorse anything that had to do with dating, because well, for a while I didn't know why, because I'm thinking, you have this problem. I see you have these events that you're hosting, these young adult events and what have you. Like, I'm looking at your website. I see that that something needs to be done because you're trying to do it, or maybe you're ignoring it completely and we're emailing back and forth. But after a couple of parishes were not interested in anything, I would just get them on the phone and call them and say, thank you for politely declining, but I need you to tell me why. Like, why do you not want to promote us to your parish? Or, why do you not want us to come in and host an event? And again, this has totally changed since back then, but it was a liability thing. They didn't want to be liable for creeps coming in, or, something going bad, or people saying that they met because we were working with the parish and then it went south, whatever. So I respect that and I understand it. So we were able to kind of change our tactic, our pitch based on that feedback. But yeah, if something's not working, I would just ask why.
Yeah.
Or if you're not, they just tell me why. So
yeah, asking why is super fascinating. Like, people don't do it for some reason. Like, but finding out the reason no is always probably more. It's more, you can get a lot more signal from it even than people saying yes, because you'll understand like the core challenge there.
And a couple times too that turned into no but. So why can we not do it this way? But we would continue talking and we figured out an avenue to do something different instead. So
yeah,
turning those into wins.
Were there any situations where, aside from the parishes not wanting to like work on more of like a parish-wide basis, where you guys like stories of like, hey, we the priest got mad at us for putting the cards in the background, or like, were there any like don't do type of things you would suggest to others to be cautious of?
It's a great question. I don't know that we've had any of those stories, which makes me wonder, were we not aggressive enough? Because I like to hop a fence, and then let them tell you you can't be here. But no, specifically the priests have been really supportive. Our first few investors came from connections through a priest. And yeah, I think they see it, and I think they know the problems exist and they see it, whether it be on their campuses or with their young adult events, things like that. So priests, I'm very grateful because priests have been very supportive. But no, we never got ran anywhere.
I feel like hiring a priest or bring them on as an advisor to be a product manager for Catholic stuff would not be a bad move, because they should be tuned in pretty well to what's going on. One other thing I'm quite curious about is with the idea, typically in dating right now, it's often we tend to basically judge a book by its cover. I'm curious if there are any particular outcomes, because you're doing the speed dating thing where they're not necessarily, you guys are kind of helping arrange who's going and who's meeting who, but you're not, they're not choosing who I want to talk to, but they are going to go through these conversations. What is it, like 7 minutes or something?
Yeah, between 5 and 7.
Yeah, so they're going to have a conversation with somebody. Have you noticed any change of disposition, or have you found out any data around like, hey, the person, like when you ask them afterwards, like they would judge that person as not their type because of their looks, but then they started to know, like once they got to know them, they realized, you know what, this is actually like, I really enjoy this conversation. A Catholic founder is somebody who recognizes that they are called to be an instrument of God's will in the world. We're not building a business for our own sake. We are simply stewards. If that describes how you think about entrepreneurship, we want you in the Catholic Founders Guild. We're growing an association of Catholic business owners who believe in these things deeply so that we can invest in, buy from, and support one another. We do this through our exclusive membership directory, monthly group calls, and our group chat. But there's a lot more to it than that. The Guild has a lot to offer. The cost is only $10 a month or $100 a year. So if you believe that you were created to create, join the Catholic Founders Guild today. You can do so by going to CatholicFounders.com/subscribe and upgrade to any paid subscription. See you in the Guild.
We've had several pieces of feedback that support that, yeah. That they say I met men or women that I wouldn't have necessarily approached out in public, but we ended up having a really great conversation. We're going to get coffee. Maybe we didn't, maybe it wasn't, we decided it wasn't a fit to take the next step forward, but it really showed me that maybe I need to be more open and maybe I'm limiting myself based on things such as you just described. And so it's a win for us. There are several ways that we find that we categorize wins at Candid, but that's one of them. If we can try to help reshape the way that others are seeing, dating and not see it as so, obviously people have preferences and that's, nothing new, but how have we filtered the way that we see one another based on what the world around us, the habits that have been reinforced through social media and digital, demands and what have you. So yeah, we do get several people we also have people who say that, but then also we had a guy tell us once, I really like your platform because I win. Like I know that I can get a date or get someone to give me a chance if I can talk to them. And maybe my profile doesn't always make them want to talk to me. Like maybe I don't photograph well, but if I can get them in a conversation, I know like that my personality and my confidence and my, the way that I am can really work in my favor, and I've seen that happen too. So it's really interesting. Yeah,
you shouldn't have to have a 4-year degree in looks maxing to be able to get somebody to say yes to. I think it's interesting. I also think, just for what it's worth, that if this habit can be rebuilt in people, it's a fundamentally Christian habit to view people as human, as more than their looks, as more than you might. Obviously, there's like assumptions. People make assumptions based on how you choose to present yourself in the world, but we need to recognize that every person is a person and created in the image and likeness of God, regardless of how they look, and that can then translate into a lot of other things too, where the person is genuinely more interested in being charitable towards everybody they encounter rather than just judging people based on their looks. So I think I hope to see the downstream effects of this as you guys continue to do this. Now, I understand, I think we covered most of it, but I do want to make sure we talk about the product today. So what does it look like today? Are there any new features you guys are rolling out? And just so people understand exactly what they're getting if they sign up for this and what it looks like.
So what we are, just to be crystal clear, we are a virtual speed dating platform turned app. So what we allowed you to do on the platform on the web, we turned into an app that we launched this October with some added features. So you come to us, you do a series of onboarding questions that we have you so that we can get to know you a little bit better. And then from there, once your account is approved, you can sign up for one of our events. We host several events a week, usually 2 nights a week. We'll host 2 to 3, 4 events, and you can sign up for one of those events, and you only see events that are filtered for you. So we introduce you to 5 to 7 singles minimum on an event. Conversations are 5 to 7 minutes long a piece, and then after each conversation, you can decide whether or not you'd like to continue the conversation. If you would like to do that, then you are able to chat with them through our messaging platform that we have on Candid. And then we also have a feature that we're actually completely rehauling at the moment, but it's called Candid Connections. So it's not a swipe, but it's our version of something that you don't have to be live to do or to participate in, and we serve you matches based on what we know about you, and we run those matches through our algorithm and some other tools that we've created, and sometimes we get in there ourselves. I like to see what's going on, but we serve you matches that you can decide whether or not you'd like to continue the conversation there, and then if you do, you are matched and you have a couple of texts or messages back and forth before we ask you to get on a video call. So our entire product is pushing you to stop being so in your own world online virtually and get face to face with someone and have a real conversation. And then from there, we ask that you please go in person into the wild and experience each other in real life.
The notorious challenge of the business model of anything like dating is like people hopefully stop using it. What is your guys' business model on this, and what are you seeing? Are you trying to like kind of move upstream at some point to help like people beyond? Like what's the thought process there?
Yes. So obviously, like you said, we want our users to be able to come meet people and then hopefully they go get married and live a happy life. That'd be great. There's also people who come to us because they need help, and we offer date coaching and different types of services for them. So yes, from a business standpoint, while we wanted to build out the dating part first and really make sure sure that we nailed that. There are several plans that we have on our roadmap to increase the lifetime value of our user. And those are exciting. I'm not going to share all of them here, but yes, we definitely have plans to make sure that we can walk with our users, not just when they're single, but when they're dating, after they're engaged, after they're married, potentially to when they're having kids.
Nice. I think that's this is especially an area where I think, I sometimes, I wouldn't say critical, but I definitely, there's a lot of people who are like, oh, it's just the Catholic X, the Catholic Y. And sometimes the total market hypothetically is small. But there are certain things where we can't really cede the battlefield to the world because they just don't value what we value in these areas. And if you think about it, on top of that, there's also the added fact that if we do our job well, and especially in these domains, we'll make more Catholics, right? There'll be plenty more people who are interested in becoming part of this, and they're enjoying our faith, obviously, and then also just having children who are also hopefully going to be raised in a good way that this grows. So I think it's good that we have these particular Catholic-specific needs or Catholic-specific services in these particular domains. We just had recently Cana Wedding on too, so we've
Cana's awesome.
Yeah, those guys are great. I really respect what they're doing. So
yeah.
We're pretty much out of time. Let's wrap up with a bit of rapid fire, and then we'll get you on your way. So What is your favorite scripture?
My favorite scripture, John 6, but specifically when Peter says, Lord, to whom shall we go? You have the words of eternal life. I find myself coming back to that one daily, especially being an entrepreneur, especially building a business.
Yeah, I think it's important. Funnily enough, somebody else I interviewed with this morning also mentioned John 6. It's a good one. It's a good one. And then who's your favorite entrepreneur?
I've been really interested in Mike Rapoli lately.
Who's that?
He is a very interesting man. He's from Queens. If you know companies, Noble, Body Armor, Vitamin Water, he came in. He's an industry disruptor. He's a very large personality, but it's fascinating to me. But he's a brand challenger, and he's kind of like a small brand guy that likes to disrupt the industry for the bigger brands and figure out a way to connect with his audience and make his audience feel emotionally connected and invested in the product that he's trying to build. So he's very interesting. I mean, obviously Elon's great.
Yeah, but that's pretty fascinating too. You said Michael Pulley?
Mike Rapoli, yeah. He recently just bought the United Football League. Yeah, that's my other world.
That's cool.
He's interesting.
Like now, who is one of your favorite saints? I'm sure you have many, but who's one of your favorites?
I have many. St. Joseph, Fulton Sheen, and Mother Angelica. And I know the last two aren't quite.
But they're close.
But they're close. And Mother Angelica I feel like her a lot. And I just love her. I loved her outlook when she was building EWTN and just everything that I've ever. We were raised on Mother Angelica, but just then later in life, now becoming an entrepreneur and trying to build something, I look to her a lot.
Mm-hmm. Especially when that's pretty cool. I guess I should probably invoke her more because she is a legend. I haven't thought about that, but Fulton Sheen, I have this little like morning devotional of his. It's usually just like one-liners, and I swear, he should have been alive when Twitter was around because he would be the most famous person on Twitter. Like his one-liners just like strike you right between the eyes. They're really good. And then, what is your favorite devotion?
Adoration.
Amazing. All right. Well, not much to be said else than that. I really appreciate you coming on. I'm really fascinated by what you guys are building. I think you're doing a good service for everybody. So keep up the good work. And where should people, if they're single people listening, where should people go to sign up and get onto the into the platform?
Thank you. Yeah, you can find us on socials. We're Candid_Dating. In the App Store, we're Candid Dating, and we're on CandidDating.net.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Taylor. Thanks for
Thanks for having me, Silas. Thank you.
Thank you guys so much for tuning in to this episode with Taylor. I hope you enjoyed it. There's so much value and interesting perspectives that she had to share. And as we wrap up, I'd ask you to just consider two kind of core things as you go back to your day. Number one is look at the trap of this kind of transactional or utilitarian mindset that the world around us operates on, right? This is obviously present in the dating culture, as Taylor shared, but how often is it true in our own lives and how we run our businesses, right? Are we seeing our customers as just ways to make money? Do we see our suppliers that way? Do we see the people we encounter? Are these all just transactions, or are these human relationships that we can foster and use as an opportunity to shine the light of Christ to those around us. So really consider that for ourselves. Number two is, how are you handling the tough moments, or the moments where it seems like God is not listening? Do you, we've all been there. I think Taylor obviously shared her story of waiting on the dev team that had been silent for months as she was sweeping her kitchen floor and just crying out to God for help. And then at the last moment, the dev team comes back to her. We've all been in those situations where it's, can we meet payroll? Where are we going to get our next customer? Different challenges with the products. Entrepreneurship is hard. You all know, you all have your moments. But how do you approach those moments? Do you have confidence that God will take care of you, that God will help you? Or do you, rely on your own human needs? Is the first step prayer? And is it prayer that God's will be done and that he'll be with you? Or is it just, hey, Lord, please help me. I want to have a successful business. We have to really focus on that. The point is not that he will make us successful and rich and wealthy. It's that he will be with us. And we need to recognize that he will take care of us. It may not look like the way we want it to look like, but we will. He will take care of us. So really consider, in those challenging moments, if you're facing those right now, to just really put your trust in God in those moments. So if you enjoyed this discussion and you think other people would benefit from it, I ask you, please share it with one or two other people who are either business owners or who are considering entrepreneurship. It really helps us grow the show, right? It helps us grow the reach of this. We really believe in the ideas that we're able to draw out of people. So we ask that you help us share that. If you listen or like to watch on YouTube, please also subscribe there. We're trying to get monetized at some point, so that'd be really helpful. And please do leave us a review on your favorite podcasting player app. If you're somebody who's kind of just new here, you're listening or watching on Substack, and you're not a regular Substack user, please also go follow us on your favorite podcasting player, so that way we become part of your regular routine. And finally, if you are a single Catholic looking to avoid the swiping culture, go check out candiddating.net and see what they're up to. They're doing some amazing things, as you heard today. And if you are a Catholic entrepreneur or builder and you want to be surrounded by other like-minded business owners who are trying to become saints through their pursuit of entrepreneurship, consider joining the Catholic Founders Guild today. It's only $100 a year to join, so anybody can afford it. We're not trying to get rich off of this. We just want some level of commitment and the ability to fund this project. To join or to learn more, you can go to join.catholicfounders.com. We've now got a new website that lists out the core things that are offered in the guild, and there's also a link to join and become a paid member there. So again, that's join.catholicfounders.com if you want to be part of our Catholic Founders Guild, which is a community of about 140 Catholic business owners who are just striving daily to become saints through running their business. Thank you guys so much for being on this journey with us, for tuning in. We will see you next time. God bless, and do not forget that you were created to create.